one of your robots, Tom Turbo in future. It would be a nice feature. We would make the Austrians happy. I don't think it's the biggest market for you, but
step by step.
Yeah. Let me just check if we are live. Yeah, I think we should be.
What's your favorite book? You're reading quite a few books, then.
Which domain? Favorite book of which domain?
I don't know, to talk about.
So many. One of the books that I think are a must-read for entrepreneurs and investors is this book, The Power Law.
Yeah.
It's written by Sebastian Malaby, and he was a guest on my podcast also. Yeah. And this was one of my core questions. How do we finance tech and deep tech? And everybody's talking about venture capital. But what's the origin of venture capital? What's the meaning of venture capital? Especially in the bubble times from 2020 to 2022, everything was venture capital suddenly. So every investment in a private company was named a venture capital investment. But the specific origins are quite narrow and specific. And I think this book helps people understand what venture investments is, and especially the motivation of venture investors. And it's pretty much boils down to all the time the same. Investors invest to make money. And often when I speak with startups, the question is, how do you return the capital? Some look at me then and say, why should I return capital? So it's one of the basic books. Then I don't have it. Selling, I think this is pretty good. Influence,
okay.
From Robert Cialdini. I think he's also Italian roots, I guess, or not so sure. Arizona State University. Let's not talk about this. So, sorry. But what is your favorite book?
Good questions. I think I'm not reading enough, so I want to read more. But I mean, I really enjoyed Steve Jobs' biography. I think that was really very captivating when I was a child and loved Harry Potter. Now I really like more of psychology books, also innovation books. Like, I don't know, I like when I can read something and I can somehow relate to my life. I think the hard things, or so what's it called?
Hard things.
By
Andrews, what was it?
Andreessen Horowitz, yeah.
Andreessen Horowitz, yeah. Mark Andreessen, I think. Hard things about.
Yes, I don't know. One of those. He wrote it. I think that was really cool.
Yeah.
I think I have to read it again to understand everything.
Yeah, the best books are meant to be read again. One of from the philosophy part, one of my favorite books is this one, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations.
Yes.
This is simple rules for life. Always be friendly, always be helpful. Basically, don't fight.
Helps as well.
That's true. So you love reading as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just so amazing when you, or let me put it that way. Before, when I learned to read, I really enjoyed it. And then at school, I had to read. I didn't like that much. But then I went back into university and I did mechanical engineering, and you still read, but you don't read, you read more numbers. Then I sort of found my passion again and started reading more and more when I find time. But I think it's cool how, because people put so much effort to condense knowledge, and by just being able to extract this so easily, I mean, I am aware that I'm probably missing a lot of it, a lot of thought that went into that process, but it's I think it's very, very interesting.
How old are you?
How old do I look?
I'm not very good in guessing age. Please spare me the the embarrassment.
I'm 27. I'm 27.
27. I'm close to 50. So you grew up basically. Did you experience any time in your life without internet? I don't think so. Conscious.
Yeah, it was no. It's a good question. No, I mean, I played a lot of football when I was young, so I didn't. I
PlayStation or real life?
No, like real life. I like PlayStation as well, but
yeah, well, Switzerland has a good football team. compared to Austria. So,
I never played that well. So,
and Italy, especially. I mean, Italy is.
yes,
How many times was Italy world champion?
4 times.
4 times. Impressive. Austria 0. So.
But it's the law of large numbers, right? Italy has 10 times more people. So
yeah. Did you grow up in Italy or did you grow up in
no,
Switzerland?
no. I grew up in Zurich, kind of all my life.
Zurich is a great town. So, and this brought you also then to the famous ETH Zurich.
Yes. So I did my high school here, and then was not really sure what I wanted to study, and then I had a meeting with a person, and he was like, look, if you really don't care what you study, then choose the hardest thing. Then sort of I went, okay, then I would probably have to go to ETH.
Then choose the hardest thing. What was the hardest thing in your opinion?
Well, I enjoy doing things with people. So I like sort of the business aspect. I also like psychology. I also like math. Let me rephrase. He didn't say choose the hardest thing, but choose the things you're least likely to do when you're older. And he said, trust me, math and all these engineering things you're not going to do when you're older. So do them now, have them in your backlog, be able to use it, but you're not going to do it later on.
Why was the assumption that maths is nothing for later in life?
This is just, he said, a lot of people, they learn other things later on, but there are not many people, I mean, this is just sort of statistic, right? Not many people learn integral, differential equations again. At some point, they might start to read more and read books or start to talk more, but they're not going to do, I mean, some people do, I don't want to say it's, but on average.
You never know. You walk into a restaurant.
That's true.
Suddenly the waiter says, can you solve this equation for me?
Yeah.
What you high school at ETH Zurich? Why did you decide to stay in Zurich and not go somewhere, all these fancy locations that are easy to reach these days, since you're 27? I mean, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, London. Yeah. Also, the Austrian universities are quite good, the German ones. What was so attractive to stay in Zurich for you?
Yeah. So actually, I had this question twice. So the first time I did an exchange year in the UK. And I then had the opportunity, or like not yet, because I would have done another year, but to really go to some very cool universities in the UK. But what I missed a bit from the British education was the depth, and also all the different subjects you have. When you have high school in Switzerland, I guess similar in Austria, you have 12 subjects. I loved history. I also loved physics as well. But when I went to the UK, I just did all the sciences, which was great, but I missed the other part. So that was when I for the first time turned down the internationals. By that time, I also wrote a lot. So there was also the opportunity to go to the US for also rowing to one of those big universities, and then went back. Yeah, that sort of decided why I want to go to ETH, because I thought it's harder. I think it was kind of hard. And then after my bachelor's, I also wanted to go away. But then Ascento started to be a thing, because in the last year of our studies at ETH, and I think this is really great about ETH, you have the opportunity to make a focus project. And that was also one of the reasons why I studied exactly this subject at ETH, because they basically give you time. You get the ETH name, so you can get money from companies to support your project, and you can build whatever cool idea you might think is used. And you are in a team of 8, 9, 10 engineers. They all think they can do something super ambitious, and you just give it a shot. And this is when we sort of started the first, this Tina robot here, the first Ascento robot, which really had the goal to be a wheeled legged systems that can go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And because this had so much traction, I then decided to not go abroad for my master's, but stay and continue working on the project.
That's a great thing. When I started in the 90s, basically it was either you pursue an academic career or you work for a big corporation or a small corporation, nothing in between. You mentioned that basically at the ETH Zurich in these days, you finished or was at the end of your educational phase, let's call it this way, and then were pushed towards entrepreneurship. How is the support system at the ETH Zurich for people who wants to found a company after they graduate? Why is it not like in the old days that you're just pushed towards the academic career?
So I wouldn't say you're really pushed, because you have
forced into it.
I think you have to fight for it, because the path of least resistance is still, you go either to academia. I mean, there you still have some competition to get a PhD, or you go into industry. I mean, you have to get your funding together, make sure you can actually do your project. But what is great about ETH, it has a strong track record of good technical innovations. And so that helps you a lot in the beginning. So nobody really questions your technological expertise. And this allows you to start, and then sort of this is one part, the solid technological foundation. And then there are a lot of measures to bridge between the academia and the profitable business. Because let's be honest, academia, you have to prove it, you have to get the results, but then a profitable business thing has to work all the time and actually deliver value. And these are two very different things. And in between, how do you go from, yeah, it worked once, we have a cool video, look at it, to, well, it works every day, every hour. And this is actually solving a core business problem of you. And there are quite a few initiatives. There is the Pioneer Fellowship from ETH, there's a Bridge Fellowship from the Swiss government. And there are a lot of these small, I mean, there's not a lot of money, but it gives you a bit more air to put it to the next step, which is then needed to get external funding. And I think this is very, I'm very fortunate, and I feel very lucky to have this opportunity. And without that, I think developing such a deep tech is really hard, because as students, like, we don't really have any money. We can not just live by ourselves. So we need something to sustain, especially to buy all the hardware. Like, you need some capital. So
that's a nice description. At the university level, things have to work one time. So a prototyping phase, and in a business, it has to work basically every time. How was, I'm curious to learn or hear from you, how was the process of founding the company? Can we talk a little bit more about the step from you being a researcher at university level, how you made the decision of founding a company, and the process of creating it in Zurich?
Yes. So I got this very good advice that you should only found a company. Oh, so it's, I know it in German, it's so spät wie möglich, so früh wie nötig. As late as possible, as early as needed. You should found a company, because as soon as you start founding a company, all kind of trouble starts. Contracts, everything, you can go bankrupt, all this thing. So really try to keep it, to not do it until you really need it, because either you have an investor or you have a customer. And this is sort of the approach that we took.
Okay, can we hold a little bit? So you mean the attitude at the ecosystem at ETH Zurich is basically stay as long as possible at the university level with your idea, develop it, and then you must then found a company, which is completely the opposite of what I hear from the US guys or the UK people. They basically have an idea, make a pitch deck, found a company. What's your take on that? Two approaches.
I think it really depends. For us, it suited us really well. Maybe when looking back, we could have probably funded it earlier and be a bit faster. But I think the core message is you should not just fund a company to fund a company. You should ask the big questions first. And I agree with that a lot. Like, you should just funding a company because it's cool. I think that might help you a bit when you ride a hype, but that's not going to be sustainable long term. So there I'm a bit more pro on sort of the ETH approach. However, I also think you just have to try it. Like, you don't know. And at that point where we transitioned to a company, we moved faster in certain directions. We don't had the whole, okay, no, it's a research project, so it cannot just be paid, have to get this approval from all these different people. Because if you're not a company and you're a researcher, you're basically a big corporate. That's not at all a startup. So, and that has some advantages, but at some point these advantages go away because your core capability as a startup is you're faster. And if you then remain attached with this big corporate, you can just not be fast enough and agile.
You said that you have to answer, your advice is to answer the big questions first before founding a company. With your experience with Ascento, what are the big questions that a founding team should have answered before they jump into a corporate shell?
Yeah, so I think the first question is really you have to, on a team side, I mean, you can start from different levels. I will not start on the team level. You have to agree on the basics way how you want to have it set up. This is very core. Like, you spend so much time with each other. You have to make sure that you agree on it. And the thing is, when you start a company, it's like going into a relationship and immediately having a baby, because the company is your baby, and you have to make sure that the baby, the company, always has first priority. Because you have to think about what all can go wrong and talk about it, have a clear understanding, and making sure you're aligned that whatever happens, we want to make sure that the baby becomes an independent individual, a strong independent individual. And I think so this is on the team side. And then on the other side is also being able to, it's not all nice and pretty. Like, you hear only the good stories. You have to be ready to go through some very hard learnings. I think that's a bit on the team side. You have to ask these big questions each other. There's some cool like questionnaires online. And then on the other side, you need to be sure that what you do is something that you're passionate about. Because if you don't like the problem and you don't like your solution, that's going to be a miserable life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And today we have the advantage to be able to ask ChatGPT what are the 10 biggest questions.
Yes, ChatGPT is amazing. Yes.
Before starting, you mentioned you go through a lot of hardship and challenges starting a company. What was the biggest challenge with Ascento so far?
So many. So maybe a technical one, sort of in the really beginning, took us so long because we had no idea about sensors, about estimators, about control. Like, we were very fast doing the first balancing robot because that's just a proof of concept kind of. But then to actually get it on a very solid level, it took us another 7 months, and we were so like frustrated. Like, how can it be so difficult? And in the end, it's sort of, we just missed one crucial parameter that we didn't understand what he meant, and we just left. And then only after going through everything, we said, this is the problem. We were able to solve it, and then it worked perfectly. So that's from a technical side. And then, yeah, there is a lot of, I think that was really from a tech side hard. And then there is also, you have to focus. And focus means not doing things. And not doing things means also saying no. And that is, especially when you're young and naive, that's hard. I mean, that was for me kind of hard, because only when we started to be very structured and say, okay, but for what can you really use this technology? Then it started to pick up. Because before we sort of were very reactive and said, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. But then we said, okay, we have this robot that can carry payload, and we have to figure out a way how this can be commercial and added value. Then we asked questions like, what are people willing to pay for it? What is the task that it actually does? How does it generate value? Is it to generate value because it moves around, or just because it's a marketing stamp, whatever? And by asking this question, you don't have to be very honest and say no to a lot of things till you have found this one niche where actually it makes sense. So that was also hard because you have to You have to be honest, and you have to say no to things. And then if you then only have a few and they don't seem that promising at times, then it feels like, what am I even doing here?
Yeah, especially these days with the internet, I think it's 10 times harder than 40 years ago, because there was basically not so much opportunity that came to people's doorstep. And now with the internet, email, social media, you have closed the funding rounds. I think people are starting knocking on your doors. You get more and more opportunities, and you have to stay focused.
Yes.
It's hard. When we talk about robotics, what inspired you? What motivated you to choose that area for your company?
Yeah. So I think, to be very honest, we started with a solution and then looked for a problem. And we really liked robotics because we believe this is the big disruption that we will have. You have internet, you have sort of all the information that you can automate, digitize. But with robotics, you start to actually do the labor, the hard, the manual work, the physical world. And if the digital world is evolving super fast, at some point the physical is sort of lacking. And that's why we said, yeah, we have to do something with robotics. That was sort of very clear.
I mean, it's a smart move in my opinion, because I mean, everybody was doing software in the last 10 years. And SaaS, I think there was only SaaS in the deal flow. And you decided to go down the hardware route at a time when people were basically saying, there is no money in hardware. How do you want to make hardware? Why this decision? Why this contrarian approach? How did you find that?
I think a lot of people didn't really see the mega trends that are happening. Like, one big mega trend is our good old phones. These phones allowed that sensors, chips, everything becomes very, very cheap, which is one part. And the second thing, there was a lot of investment in autonomous driving, but autonomous driving is a huge problem. And we are now leveraging basically the autonomous driving investment, because there are a lot of technologies which not yet work on roads, but for our niche, perfect. The same, and then also all the components, like 20 years ago, you didn't have the compute capacity, the good motors. Now this becomes available. It's similar to SaaS really picked up because you had AWS and others. Like, sure, in the beginning you just have your own server, but it's the environment is now really ready for a robotics disruption. There are still a lot of things to do. It's like hard, it's manufacturing, it's scaling, it's everything. But now the building blocks are here with the right focus. I believe now it's possible. 15, even 10 years ago, I don't think so.
Yeah, in the 80s it was Terminator basically. So it
Yeah,
was a huge vision. I mean, Austrian Arnold Schwarzenegger. So
yeah.
we have to tackle this topic. I mean, you mentioned autonomous driving, the chip industry, and I think in these areas there's a lot of pull for ideas, and for talented people like you and your team are. Elon Musk probably would be happy to hire you, put you in the company. Also, NVIDIA probably could make use of your talent. How was the process for your team from these two huge clouds that you mentioned to niche down to your product? Can you walk us through that?
So, yeah. So we started with the robotics side, and our robot, this is sort of those two versions, the Ascento and the Ascento Pro. They were really cool. They could drive around, we could do cool videos, but they had a flaw. And the flaw was that if the model assumption is not true anymore, basically when we put them in a place that we didn't think about before, they wouldn't work that well. And so then one of our co-founders sort of developed novel algorithms that use AI to make the robot be able to go in all kinds of terrains. And this was a pivotal moment, because these new algorithms allowed the robot to be so robust that we were like, what? And this is the so-called reinforcement learning. And so we sort of combined the two, and then we said, wow, this is now really a system that is capable to go in all these places. And before, it was, sure, you could do it, but you need like 100 people. Now he can just train it somewhere in the cloud, deploy it, and the robot gets super good. And this is the sort of how the whole robot AI platform started. And then we sort of looked for our vertical, our niche. And security just makes so much sense because it's a place where you have a lot of repeatability, repetition. You have to check things. And this is perfect for robots. Like doing the same job. This is amazing. We're really good at. They will be able to do other things at some point, but we didn't want to choose something that we don't think was possible. And this is really something that is possible.
How does it look like in reality? What are use cases your robots can do?
So our robot is used for outdoor patrols of large assets. This can be pharma companies, production facilities, campus. And even there, we only target a very small niche now in the beginning. And we allow you to, instead of having a guard that walks around a fence, checks number plates, checks doors, you can install our robot. It's super fast. Within hours, you just walk it through the tasks, define the rules, and then the robot automatically generates the reports, randomly patrols during the scheduled times. Only outdoors at the moment. This is for technological reasons. We can only do this part now. But in the future, this will expand. The robot will be able to do indoor, will integrate other sensors and everything.
So it's basically the modern version of a watchdog.
Yeah, pretty much. The house, or sort of we call it the dog house, where the robot is on its charging station, is also a dog house.
It looks cute. It looks cute. It's really fun. I watched the video. It's really fun to watch it. I mean, security is a huge area. How does it look in practice when a company decides for your solution? Can you describe the normal day of the use of your robots? What does the company get in value?
Yeah, so usually it depends really on the industry, but when you now take an example, you have a production facility and they want to make sure that during night there is nobody around because they value very valuable materials laying around, and also machines and other plants. So what they do, they hire security company to make sure that no irregularities happen at that area. And now the problem is, if you have a person, I mean, a person can do more, but a person cannot do it with that accuracy as a robot. And so if you then have enough tasks that are very repetitive, then we are able to provide you a robot for less cost than a person, and can take care of that. And with that, companies are basically saving money. Plus, they're getting very intricate reports about their assets. So the security industry is not in all places very advanced. So some still use pen and paper, and we can give you a report. You can ask even questions based on our database. You can sort of tell me when this car was here, or why was there on building F ever a window open over the last 5 years, 5 months or whatever. You could also ask 5 years, but we're not yet that old. And you sort of become you have not just the patrolling that you have to do, but you also have the capability to access this data all the time. And I think this is where, so part of the value is making sure it's safe, and the other part is sort of, oh wow, I can actually get insight, I can improve it. Okay, so we should probably make sure that people don't leave this window open because we're heating and we don't want to waste that much energy, or why are there people using our parking lot over the weekend? All these kind of things.
Because it's cheaper, probably. So a very bad joke. I'm from Vienna, so we only make bad jokes. I mean, the security part, I get it. I mean, basically, when I think about humans, is they walk their route. I think in the 90s, 80s, it was just making a check mark on a paper that they were there. Then they entered the time and said everything okay. And if these days, probably it's with a mobile phone or something. So
exactly, you take a
check
tag.
in.
Yes.
And this is all the information that you get. And the robot can do basically the same, but
Plus
generate more data.
Generate a report, exactly. Yeah.
does it take videos, basically? So
yeah, we can take videos. And this is all sort of, we say this is part of the configuration. You can also let the robot record video. You cannot record video. You can only store pictures. You can store pictures and video. You can store them for however long you might want. That's super easy for us. You can configure the memory power of the robot, which makes sense because depending on where you deploy, you have different data privacy requirements, which are very important in our industry.
That's pretty cool. So it's basically they get an entire video report of what happens during the night at the facilities, at the route. And if something serious happens, somebody breaks in, they can trace everything back at the end of the day. That's pretty cool. I mean, security, you have the easy side. I worked for security in Formula One races back in the 90s. The challenge was in the 90s, basically, that the races were every weekend at a different location. How long does it take to train your robots on a new territory? Is it just a second, you just deploy them and they do everything by themselves, or do you need to walk them through certain procedures for a month and then they can do the work?
So if you train a person, it usually takes 2 to 3 days. So you take them on the route, you show them all the things. First time you show them, second time they do it, you correct them a bit, and third time sort of the test. What we do with our robot, we can sort of skip the second and the third step. We just have to walk it through once. And then we already have the report. We already know what it does, and we know exactly what it will do the next couple of days as well. So you can really install it quickly. Sometimes our clients want to adapt it because they maybe say, well, take this route, and then they look at it, we'll take also that route and that route. So then we might have to retrain it again. But we have to tell the robot what to do, and we have to also define the rules based on which the robot should check the premise. Like, should we look for people? Should we look for open doors? Basically everything you usually would formulate in a document and then give to the guard, you just give us the guard this document, and we sort of program it into the robot.
So we are not yet at R2D2 level from Star Wars.
No, not yet. Not
100% autonomous.
No, it's not 100%. You have to still teach it, but you also want to clearly define what the robot does. Like, otherwise, how should it know what it does, right? And there are certain general, which you don't, there's not much teaching involved. You just tell the robot to always look for people. I mean, this is just something we have already.
And probably for animals. I mean, I remember the Formula One days. It was a great way to fund my studies. The cool shifts were the day shifts in the paddock area. Of course, I mean, you saw all these cool drivers and talk to them, and all the famous personalities like Dieter Mateschitz from Red Bull, for example. And the night shift was horrible. So it's basically 12 hours standing at an empty place, just being there or walking around and patrolling the area. How do you deal in an emergency case? I mean, when something happens, the night shift's job at the Formula One race was to make sure that cameras don't get stolen, that nobody breaks in to the trucks, that nobody breaks into restricted areas with replacement parts for the Formula One race. I mean, this would have screwed up a whole weekend if something serious happens. What can your robots actually do when somebody breaks in? I think this is the worst case scenario, probably.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. So first of all, you mentioned the night shift and the day shift. That's very similar now. People don't like to work at night. So our robots are mainly used at night, actually. And then the other thing with the emergency, this is always, I mean, this is a big topic in security. Like, in security, you can never be 100% sure. It's just another layer. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, well, when I have to secure something, yes, a person can do more, but I also don't want the person to get hurt. And the robot, sure, it has strong lights and it has direct two-way communication. So you can tell directly the suspect, hey, there's police informing you're being video recorded. But if someone has really malicious intent and is ready to, kick the robot or whatever, you would probably prefer to have a robot in front of such a person rather than one of your guards, because the alarm gets transmitted immediately and then you can get backup. Yeah, it's mainly a deterrent, and it can alarm, but it cannot react.
So basically the robot depends on humans then. So they can call in a human security team or the police, but basically cannot do anything by itself. What happens, I mean, if I was a bad guy, so the first thing that would pop up in my mind is, okay, if the robot is stopping by, I simply destroy it. Is there any routine built in that at least before the final moments of the poor robot, an alarm goes off, or that something is recorded? How do you handle this situation?
Yeah, so all robots are continuously checked for health check, if they're alive, if everything is good. And as soon as a robot gets damaged, we'll probably still have some footage from the actual event, because this is continuously sent out. And then we get an alarm. And this alarm can then be programmed. This depends on the client. Some clients say, well, I want to directly call on my phone. Others say, no, just send me an email. Others say directly inform whatever people might be involved. But we monitor the robots directly, and we know exactly if something happens. So once, for example, someone tried to steal it, and we track it. Like the robot is full of trackers. If you steal it, amazing. Like, we know exactly where you are. Sure, if you put it in a metal box, then it's gonna be hard, but we know where the last position was. And it's very similar to if someone steals your phone, right? You can track it. So
it's one of the dumbest thing people can do these days, to steal phones or iPads or robots that are trackable and traceable anywhere they are.
And the robot is not that valuable when everything is encrypted, everything is locked. It's just a piece of metal. Like, if you want to steal it, sure.
I mean, you mentioned that for the use cases. Let's go back to the use cases a little bit. I mean, for someone with a finance background, what comes to mind immediately is, okay, replace humans, cut costs, but I don't think this is the real use case. I think what you said, the value that your robots add is that you get night surveillance with a lot of data that humans cannot produce. And it sounds to me more like a useful addition to a security team rather than a replacement, because you can then use the humans for what they are needed to intervene when something happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there are sort of three reasons why it makes sense. On one side is, you really don't find the guards nowadays. So a lot of companies just can't even fulfill contracts. They have to say no.
Really? Is it so difficult?
Yes. It's because who wants to work at night? Who wants to work? Often these wages are also not the highest.
Students.
Sure, but I mean, they cannot fill the positions. So with all security companies where we work, they have their biggest problem, if you ask them, is we cannot find people.
Really?
So yes, you do replace certain people in certain areas, but because certain areas a robot could do it, whereas other areas you cannot. You need a person, you need the interaction, you need quite some physical things. So it's for the security companies, it's really a way to keep operating, because they have a massive lack of supply. And then, I think cost is definitely one factor as well. With every innovation, things become cheaper. And then the third, as you said, is the data. Like, you can get insights that were not possible before. And I think here we're really just starting to scratch the surface. We have ideas about so many things that you could do, because at some point you kind of get a digital version of your asset every day. That's super interesting for insurances. That's super interesting for building management. That's amazingly interesting for all kinds of efficiency improvements that you want to do. So we have a lot of ideas what we want to do, but always stay focused. So have to make sure to really deploy now these units and get valuable insights for the customers. But this is also why a lot of customers really like it. They say, well, it's great now, but we're already dreaming what we can do. And I think this is what like keeps us up, this interaction with clients when they say, hey, we really would love that. This is a core problem. And then a week later, you can call them and say, hey, we developed it. Here you go. It's now on your robot live. You have it now in the report. It's so cool. Like, you're actually solving someone's problem. That makes every developer heart so happy.
Yeah, and you don't need a cassette or a disc to upload the program. You can
No,
do it
it's all over the air.
This is nice. One question that I asked in the 90s for the night shift, or that I got asked from the night shift, why should I do that? I mean, it's an expensive camera in the middle of nowhere. If I'm alone there, who would respect me when a group of villains stops by and wants to steal this camera? And the security firm said basically, yeah, I mean, 1% of the cases might be that somebody is really hostile, but usually it's drunk people that stop by, think it's funny, and they want to play with the camera, and they damage it. So this is the major problem. And their response was, it just needs one human there, because it's enough to command respect, and people walk away and they don't do it. Did you measure how this sense of respect towards a robot is to humans? Are humans scared when they see a robot who pulls off an alarm and starts screaming and making noises? If this just you can imagine that this might be the way, or do you still need the human intervention at one point to scare people off and make them walk away? I mean, dogs are pretty scary. So
yeah. I think this really depends. I think at that point in time, I wouldn't say we have enough data collected that we can give you a percentage that 80% or I don't know 95% of drunk people actually respect a robot. I could also see why some people would, oh, it's a robot, I really don't care. I think what we try to do is, the robot is, if you attack it, sort of, it's like your Tesla car, like it records the whole time. So if you scratch it, I mean, they will just immediately have proof that it was you. So if you really want to break it, it's obvious for everyone that they will have proof that it was you. Sure, you can do it. If they still do it, then there's really not much you can do against it, because they have a bad intention. Like, you cannot stop people from doing that. And I think you always, we have experienced, some people find it super cool and they think, wow, this is the future. And others, oh, they don't really care. And there's like, what the hell is that? Why do we even have a robot here? Like, well, what is it doing? So I think there are always different kind of people, how they react. Like with every innovation, right? It takes some time till it becomes normal. Now we have cameras, CCTV all around us, and it becomes normal. But in the beginning, it was like, what? Where is their camera? And now people don't even bother to break one because there's so many. Like, there's probably another camera which will film you while breaking that camera. So
no, I think it makes sense. I mean, I see more synergies between human robots and AI than replacement potential. And, I think you confirm that. But for a company and for insurance companies especially, it makes absolute sense, because there's always the question when something happens, did you do everything possible to make this place secure? And the only thing that you can do is interview people, and then you have an insurance guy and say, I don't believe it. And you have a nice lawsuit, court case, and it takes a very long time. When you record everything, I mean, you just can look at the material, everything's recorded. This is the way we do it. Is it good for you? And I think also the insurance company can, before something happens, review all the recording material and think about, are there any loopholes that we want to have eliminated before we sign the contract?
Yes, exactly. And I think that really allows you to have way better pricings, on both sides, Don't have this very risky contract where you have no clue, and also you don't have to pay that much premium for something that is very safe.
Will you store the video files for a longer period?
That really depends on the clients, on the use cases. Some want to store it for that many time, that for longer. That is really dependent on the contract configuration.
Yeah, for a commercial point of view, I can absolutely see the value that you company.
I mean, we have obviously an intent to store it because we can learn a lot from this data. But we put our clients first. If someone says, hey, I only want you to store it for 2 months, well, then that's how it is. Like, I think it's a pity because we could do more learning. And what we also sometimes do is, we could only take certain part of the data where is no personal identifiable part. But this is always, so we are very proactive here with our clients and want to make sure that, because data is such a huge topic nowadays, like you don't want to mess this up.
Yeah, I believe it. Are you allowed to talk about your clients, or are you under confidentiality?
No, unfortunately, I cannot.
Okay, because I wanted to ask.
We're planning some really cool success stories. But it's yes, I mean, some of them would like in the future. So we're very excited about this. But not yet. I can just tell there are a couple.
Then, I mean, the next question would have been, can you tell a success story, a real life success story, so it becomes tangible with real people, with real companies, and with real use cases? Or do we just skip that part and say, like, it's under confidentiality, we cannot talk right now about it?
Yes, I would like to not talk about it yet, just to respect sort of our clients. But
sure, we
had some cool incidences. For us, cool. For the client, it was what did you see? What, it was really that? Okay. Yes, we'll share it in the future.
We skip it. We have something to talk about for another podcast episode. I like it. Let's go. And I read about a company while I did my research. I read a TechCrunch article. And let me just find it. I think it's here. I hope I have the right one. So it should be on the screen now.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah.
It's a little bit small at mine. You talked about how a viral video helped you move forward. And since we're in the age of social media and everybody in the B2B environment is now using LinkedIn since the pandemic, can you tell a little bit more detail to the statement, why it was so important for the development of your company to put videos online that go viral and help a company evolve?
Yeah. So maybe I have to start a bit earlier. So we have Dominic, is also in one of the co-founders. He's a magician with making videos. So he's able to make amazing videos just by using his phone and a laptop and all kinds of tricks. But so all the videos that we have is sort of, he gives them this magic touch that they are super cool. And so that's, I think we have sort of a really big asset here. And why did we do it? I mean, in the beginning, we just wanted to show other people, why are we spending every night and every weekend working on such a robot? And then we could just show a little video on your phone, put it on YouTube.
Proof of work.
Yeah, so this is what I'm doing. And then at some point we started, we want to make a This is Ascento video. And the first one we did kind of went okay. Nobody really cared. They only could do some easy tricks. And then we worked a bit more on it, had some very cool software. We just improved the software and he was able to do crazy stuff. This is then the This is Ascento 2 video. It's also with this robot here, the first generation. And that out of the blue got over 1 million views. And they were like, wow, people actually care about this. And you have to put this in perspective. This was when robotics, I think it was 2020 or so, or there were not many robotics videos that had that many views. So we were, wow, we really are onto something. And then the second viral video, which I think we sort of said, okay, assuming we would make a company, how would such a robot have to be? And this is Ascento Pro video, where we just asked ourselves, what are the features that we needed? And we shot it together, put it in a nice video, and hoped that it would go viral. And we were lucky, it went even more viral. And what we did is we hooked it up to sort of a form, so that people who are interested could click on it and then answer through the form. And with that, we did our first market study. Who could use such a robot? And a lot of these were just people, engineers, geeks like us who said, oh, this is super cool, I want one. They don't really help you to build a company. They might help you to be part of your company, but not to build one. And in that period, then we had sort of the criteria that are important. So we went through I think it was 300-400 requests, and we categorized it. And then there were quite a few interesting from industry. And then we started to interview those people. So what do you actually want to use it? And I think then there was a very pivotal moment where someone was, yeah, it's interested, come by. So we went by and showed him the robot, and he was like, honestly, guys, I couldn't care less about your video or about what the robot does or what it can do. But if you tell me that the robot is able to take pictures automatically, that would solve a big part in our industry, the security industry. And I don't care about your wheels, about your legs, why this is designed like that. Like, I don't care. But it has some cool advantages. And this is sort of how we found a really nice problem to our overly engineered solution. And this is how it helped us to find this thing. And now the way we want to, now we sort of have our niche, so we want to use this, I mean, virality, or however you want to call it, to get to clients, to get to decision makers who will see it, because this is a big part of the sales process. Is you have to be able to tell a very simple story, and with video this is great. And even if it then goes viral, that's even better. Then a lot of people see it. Yeah, but I have to say there is also a problem with that, because when you have these hits, you get a lot of requests, and it is already a full-time job to just go through all the requests, and that would be not the right way to do from a focus perspective. So you have to balance the trade-off of having a viral video and being very critical and systematic on who do you now talk to and who not, because otherwise you could be distracted for the rest of your life, which in the end doesn't help, right? Help the company.
I think this is a big problem for startup entrepreneurs, that you put it a very nice way. I mean, first you over-engineered your solution with Gadget 1 to 100, yes. And you used the dynamics that your viral video created for you to find a first potential customer, a first use case, which was pretty much narrow. But I think the challenge then is really to let go of the 99 other gadgets, and to stay focused on one. And very often I see startups being overwhelmed by all the problems of the world, and they would love to solve all problems at the same time, but lacking resources for that. And how was this process for you, this letting go process, from super cool to play around with to reach it down to just one solution?
Yeah, so I think here is one other of our co-founders who is really good at focus. And we just talk about it, and then we ask ourselves very honestly always, is this really what makes the next client convert? Or is this the thing that's going to move the needle? And if you cannot confidently say no, then although it's a great idea, it has to go away, because you only improve if you focus on incremental improvements. And I think this is what we at Ascento are very, I don't want to say religious, but very focused about. So every week we have very clear goals, what we want to achieve, and everyone knows the priority of these goals. So you're not allowed to interfere with priority 3 challenge of the week with priority 1, because priority 1 is priority 1 for a reason. And then sort of Friday afternoon, you're allowed to do non-high priority tasks. You are allowed to be creative, because it's like we copied this from Google. They have the 20%, we have the 10%. Because when you combine the two, the creativity together with the high focus, I think then you can get the best of both worlds. But when you're switching all the time, then it's a lot of work for your brain. And that's why we're super focused for 90% of the week. And then 10% of the week, you can do whatever. You can do all the craziest things that you believe can somehow bring Ascento further. And
you can easily drift off with a bunch of creative people into a pub environment where people talk all the time about problems and great solutions, and press out idea after idea. And you have thousands of ideas within a week, and nobody executes. So it makes it total sense. When we talk about the team composition, you mentioned different diverse skill sets that you have on your team. Yeah. So one that you mentioned is the social media magician.
The
Then
filmmaker. I
the
would call him the filmmaker.
the
And
filmmaker.
designer, yes, Dominic.
Then you have that focused Jedi. I call it the Jedi.
Yes.
What other skills do you recommend entrepreneurs to put on their team?
So, I mean, ideally you want to have every skill, but then it comes down to focus, right? So you cannot have every skill. So I think it's definitely focus that you can, sorry, let me start again. You need some sort of, you have to create magic. And I think this is where we have to make something special where people are like super excited about. And you could do this through multiple things, right? You could do this through great storytelling, for great product, for great videos, through all kinds of things. And the other thing you have to do is, beside making this great thing that everyone likes, is you have to listen, you have to understand, and you have to ask the questions. And I think in essence, it boils down to those two things. Asking really well, sort of the inquisitive mind has to be very, very strong, but also the product focus. Okay, this is not what we're going to do. And yeah, and then there are a lot of skills which help to in one of those areas, but you have to be, I think these are the most important things, because when you can understand the problem and you can be very focused in solving it beautifully, better than everyone else, then you can build a company.
There is building the company. I mean, I think everybody loves the happy days of company formation, when everybody gets along well and everybody's on the same page and everybody moves in the same direction and everybody can sit on the same meetings. But companies tend to grow and tend to develop, and with that comes friction.
Yeah.
Not everybody can sit at every meeting anymore. Some people might feel left out or left behind. How do you handle this in your company, this friction? Are you still in the happy days after the marriage? So, or do you also have experience with the not so happy days in your company?
Yeah, I think what is important that you are very, very honest, and you know what you're good at, and you know where you cannot add value. And but at the same time, be supportive. So if someone needs help, even if it's not your part, you have to support. But if you don't think you can add value somewhere, even if it is an important client meeting, well, then you should probably keep working on the next design, because you cannot move the needle. You always have to ask yourself, am I moving the needle in this discussion, yes or no? And that's why it's, certain things I would like to be involved on, I don't know, designing certain things, because I have an opinion about what is nice and not, but I know someone is better, and sure, it might not be exactly my taste, but that's okay. I trust them. You have to really trust them and be honest and say, but also on the other hand, say, look, I don't want your feedback here or your inputs here. Let me make a proposal, because we have to ship something. And yes, you have ideas, but I think I have a better understanding. And this really requires that within your team, you respect each other. You also respect yourself, and you're very honest.
Yeah, I think this is so important, setting these boundaries, that not everybody can add value all the time to everything. To just clearly define who's the best solution for the current problem in the company.
Yeah.
This helps move forward.
Yes, I think this is very important, because I think what helps if you do some other activities rather than just working at the company someplace, and you know that all these people, they just have best intentions to make it work, that allows you to explain in your brain, okay, he or she was a bit rude, but we have the same goal, so don't take this personal. Think about the baby, about the big picture, about whatever, the company, and because that's in the end what we sort of want to do.
I mean, when I started working in bigger corporations, way back, was before the .com bubble crash.
Yeah.
It was quite, I think, mandatory to attend every meeting that people are invited to. And these days, I mean, I like Jeff Bezos' 6-page method, where people are forced to think first, what do I want to address in this meeting? Why do I call the people in? What's the problem? What's the solution that I propose? What did we already try? What help do I need? And I really love this methodology to think before a meeting, what's on the agenda, what is the goal that we want to work for, towards to, and what outcome do we want to achieve, and who needs to be on this meeting. And when I started working, I addressed this question, probably a little bit rude, not in a very nice way. And I said, okay, I don't think I can add any value to this meeting, and thought it is a smart thing to just leave and say, okay, sort this out. It's not my cup of tea, and I'm just here to listen. And I learned that some people are really offended by such a behavior. Did you experience something similar in a company? And if yes, how would you handle such a situation?
Yeah, I mean, so we have very similar processes. We always have a meeting document before. It's clear what the goal is for most of the meetings, but sometimes you maybe just have a problem and you just want to get inputs or talk about it. And what we try to do is be very honest. And yeah, some people like to be in meetings, some people like to not be in meetings. And I think you just have to always be ready to, when you see friction is coming, take a step back and say, okay, I hope you're not hurt or anything. This is really just because we believe in that meeting you don't add value, or you would actually add value, so you should be here. Hope this is fine for you. And then most people, this is completely fine. But it's often the problem that they're not heard, or it's unclear, or they understood it differently, or they have a different idea. But when you then sort of take one step back and sort of talk about, okay, what is the actual goal? Then if you have reasonable people, it's very easy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think this goal setting in a meeting and defining the roles of people in a meeting to work towards a goal is very important to move a company forward.
Not just in meetings, anywhere. Like it's very clear who has to take what decision. So like for us, we always know who to ask or who is in charge. It's very clear, and that allows us to be super fast. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clarity, to have this clarity in the company. And I think it's the most important task of a CEO is to create this clarity in the company, in the minds of his team, and also of the investors and also of the other stakeholders. And it's really hard work.
Yes, you have a lot of different entities with a lot of different, well, sometimes different, sometimes same goals. Everyone takes it a bit differently, but I think that's also what makes it very interesting, right? It's a non-trivial goal, a non-trivial problem.
At the beginning of our conversation, we talked about the support system at the ETH Zurich.
Yeah.
And I would like to delve a little bit deeper into the depths of the Swiss ecosystem. I'm here in Austria. I have a lot of experience with the Austrian system, also with the German system, also with other systems. And I would like to hear from you, since you experienced it, how helpful is the startup ecosystem in Switzerland, especially for deep tech companies, once a team has decided to leave the safe environment of a university and actually step into a corporate life style?
Yeah. So how do I mean, I only see part of the Swiss ecosystem, so I can just give you my view on it. I think Switzerland has some huge advantages and some disadvantages, like everywhere. A big advantage of Switzerland, you have quite a few of non-dilutive funding options. You have also some very cool VCs and some investors. So that's I think from a capital perspective, early stage, very good. Later stage, Switzerland is just not a huge economy. It's a small country. So you cannot have at some point you have to leave the country. There are not many things you can do just in Switzerland that would actually become a big and profitable company. There are some few, but if you want to scale and want to make it big at some point on any path, it has to involve leaving the country. What is Switzerland very good at? You have a very strong universities, very good education system, and that attracts also a lot of talent from abroad. Besides that, is super nice quality of life here. so that means you have quite some, interested in, when I say interest, motivated people that want to do something. So I think on that perspective, it's amazing, because that then also makes that you have big companies, Google, Apple, Nvidia, Facebook, they all have huge research centers here. And with that comes also a huge pool of talent, which you could argue startups have to fight for, but you also sort of get them because they're now here. There are, specifically in Switzerland, there are some very cool initiatives. You have InnoSwiss, which is like a governmental agency that supports you to go from this research and jump across the dip between actually becoming a company. On the other hand, you could argue Switzerland didn't really do very well with the EU and all these grants, so that's why they had to make their own ones. But yeah, you cannot do everything perfect.
You had your chance to join the European Union, so
yes,
take it. Join us. You mentioned at one point in time, also in Switzerland, which has a lot of capital sitting around. At one point in time, you need to leave the country because the economy is just, I think, 10 million inhabitants or something, if I remember it right.
Around 7, 8, yeah.
7, 8, even smaller. So Austria is bigger, basically.
I think so. They have more people, yes.
1 million, we have 9. So we have 9 million in the meanwhile.
I would have to check. I think it's around 8 in Switzerland, but I don't know exactly.
And I think the Czech Republic is 10 million.
Yeah.
So we could together, this region is really nice because they have about 30 million. Then you have Bavaria. I think Bavaria is also about 10 million inhabitants.
Yeah.
But at one point in time, you need to leave this ecosystem because it's limited. And I still think that for tech companies, the UK and the US is a mandatory step. How did you perceive the support in Switzerland when you had to decide to leave the country partially for fundraising purposes, for finding customers? Which support did you get from the ecosystem to do that?
So, I mean, I think for customers, we're not really trying to jump over the pond or anything. We're still very locally focused, perfecting our product, or like improving our product. I think from fundraising, in the end, we had interest from Switzerland, but also from external investors. I think external also see that Switzerland has quite some opportunities that pop up. That's why they like also to come here. I think coming back to your question, UK and US is a mandatory step. Yes, I think so. It's at some point, definitely Europe, definitely US. This is really, it's just a numbers game, right?
Yeah, when I think about fundraising, I think Series A is fine. If I read it right on the posts from your investors, you raised 4.3 million euros. I hope I have the right
US dollars.
US dollars. Yeah, it's pretty much the same these days. Interestingly, it's possible in Europe, but when you go then up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million, you narrow down the options.
Exactly.
There's just a handful of funds, and the funds I know usually like for these rounds to have involvement from the US funds for a simple reason. There are only 2 exit opportunities for investors. One is a merger with a tech company. And when you look into pharma, AI, robotics, I think we all have the same problem these days. The majority of tech companies are in the United States.
There are some big European pharma companies, but I agree, yes.
We have some pharma companies, luckily, still in Europe, but I think also, was say 50, 60% of the business happens in the United States, not in Europe. And when I look at the software AI side, I'm not so sure that we have a strength in artificial intelligence in Europe.
I mean, I agree. I would say the leaders are definitely in the US on the AI and software side. I think in robotics, we really have now an opportunity to change this a bit. Robotics is not yet, I would say, a huge solved problem or whatever. And
really, it's let's a little bit of that. You think robotics has a lot of challenges still open?
Or like it's not not everybody uses robotics. That's what I mean. You have robots used in warehouse, yes, some in logistics, but robots can still, I mean, there are so many places where you could use robots and they're not yet deployed. So there's a lot of challenges, open problems to be solved by robotics, yes.
And how is the competition from big corporations? What are the big players in the robotic space?
So I think with big corporations, it's always they have more capital, they can have more people, but what they never will have is the speed and the focus. So yes, they could do exactly the same, but that's actually a good sign. Because when they do the same, that means, well, there is actually some money to be made there, and they help you to educate the market and everything. What are the big players in robotics? I mean, Boston Dynamics is quite famous. They were now bought by Hyundai. There are some other big companies in the US, but there is not yet. I mean, Tesla also started with their Optimus, so it's really coming. But with the startups, you have one advantage, and that is speed, and this you don't really have in most big companies. So let's see. There's a reason, yeah.
So we don't have the Apple moment yet. There is not a player like Alphabet, Facebook, or Meta, or Apple on the market where you say the winner can take it all, and you can't establish a big corporation. So there's still enough room for a startup that we have now in robotics in Europe to grow into the next Apple in this area.
I think there is definitely the possibility. A lot of European startups at some point, they sell it to a US competitor because they're just already way bigger or whatever. I think there is definitely still some air for robotics.
I'm not so scared about big corporations copying innovation, because usually big corporations have the marching order to buy from the market first before they invent something new. It's just how big corporations functions. So it's there's limited risk that somebody duplicate something, as long as it's not a simple solution that you can invent in 1 hour. But it's about the exit potential. So basically also the big players in robotics do not exist. And the second reason why I recommend going to the United States, or why investors also want to have US guys involved, is NASDAQ, going public to get more capital. It's really odd in Europe. Did you evaluate these two exit potentials for your fundraising, and how do you view the European market in that respect?
I mean, it's definitely something we thought about. There are multiple different ways how this could evolve. We really see a huge opportunity here, and we already got quite a few people who wanted to buy the company, but we just think there's a lot more that we can do. And also, I mean, who could buy Ascento? Sort of, you could argue it's probably two things. It could either be security companies or tech companies. With security companies, when they start to buy this technology, then you cannot really leverage the economies of scale and offering to all of them. So I don't really see this as like the way to go. Obviously, things might change. There's a lot of consolidation happening anyway. And then with larger exit, this is really, we have to see, like, we have a very clear vision of what we want to achieve. This is a 100 billion plus market. We have tons of ideas how we can make even more. Yes, so we got already quite a few people who wanted to buy what we've did, but this is not our goal. Like, we really see this could be a pivotal moment in innovation in robotics.
Let's talk about fundraising and vision. You mentioned that you have a very clear vision where you want to go with your company. Would you like to use the podcast to tell the vision to our audience?
Yeah, so what we do now is very focused. We do outdoor patrolling security, and we want to expand in two levels in the future. One is we want to increase the different input systems that you can have. You could think about cameras, you could think about drones, indoor systems, whatever. And on the other hand, we want to expand on the things that you can do with that data. Now it's security. Maybe you can do other things with that time. You can do predictive maintenance. You can give insights for insurances. Like there are quite a few things how we can leverage both the robotic side as sort of the data capturing agent and the AI side, how you actually leverage this data. Because one without the other is not really useful, but the combination makes the magic.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. What can you do? You mentioned predictive maintenance. How does that look like?
So this is just one idea, or like one. So predictive maintenance basically means that you predict when you have to do maintenance. So when you have to do fixes or checks. And the idea is that instead of, oh, something is broken, I call someone, they fix it, and I have downtime. With predictive maintenance, what you do is you estimate your sensor or like your machinery all the time, and you predict, or you can estimate when will now a time be while there is a failure. And before the failure happen, you switch out the part or you fix it appropriately. And with that, you get way more uptime. That is in the end, like this then massively reduces your service costs and everything.
Fully automation of maintenance of a factory, basically. So in the ideal world, in somewhere in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
you have the robots running around, flying around, surveilling everything, and predicting when which part has to be replaced, and you fully automate the process.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool idea. Pretty cool idea. And with these ideas, you went out on the market to raise capital recently. LinkedIn, your investors on LinkedIn says this, that in the last couple of months, you closed your funding round. What I'm interested to hear from you, I mean, we all experienced the glory times of 2020 to 2022, then the pain of 2022, where a lot of people were scared to death that no capital is available. We will enter in the next crisis, and it will be far bigger than 2008 and 2000, 2001 and 1987. What's the reality on the market right now? How did you perceive your market segment for fundraising?
So, I mean, I don't know how it was in 2021 or 28. I kind of remember a bit, but like I don't really have a lot of data that can give you a quantitative answer of how it was compared
but
to that.
Just qualitative, your experience.
I think for us, qualitative, I think it's obviously if interest rates are high, it's a harder sell to invest into a high risk company. I mean, this is very simple. Every percentage point that increase basically means you have to increase even more your upside, because otherwise it becomes unattractive for investors. So we go back to the power law of the book that you showed before. So I think you have to really understand this, that fundraising is, and then also building a company, it's very similar. You have to have a plan how you can make this profitable company. Otherwise it's just not interesting for investors. And I think now in these times even more, I think the questions are always the same. It's just the requirements get harder. Like if capital is almost for free, you can be more creative. But if capital is very constrained, they want to understand. They want to understand what are your margins, what are your plans to increase your margins, what are your plans to bring down costs, what are your plans to add more value. You have to know an answer. And I think what is good about this environment, it really sharpens you because you get more feedback. And I think that's always good. When it's harder, you learn more. I think for us, it was not easy in the sense it was a lot of work, but we were very fortunate that we had quite a few offers in the end, and we could sort of then choose which one we believe would help us most in the future and bring us further. And I'm super happy with sort of the team that we assembled. I mean, you're super smart people where we can all learn, and I feel very fortunate of how it all went. And now we focus full on product and customers again. And yeah, super nice.
Yeah, you made a nice selection of investors and team. So LinkedIn especially is full with positive vibes about your company. You said you had quite a few offers on the table. Could you put a ratio on it or tell some hard facts about how many people you needed to call, how many meetings you got, what the success rate was, just to in order to shape the expectations of fundraising entrepreneurs these days, what it takes to close a round. And at the end of the day, duration, how much time did it take from the decision, from the beginning of the fundraising until you got the money on your bank account?
Yeah, so it usually takes longer than you expect. What definitely helps is to think first before you start. So think about what I want to achieve and have a very clear plan, and then but at the same time sort of be flexible enough, because you cannot plan for everything. So what we did is we made a one-pager of what we want, what we offer, what traction that we have, and then we sort of shared this. We shared this with our network, with people we think could help. We sent it to a lot of investors, and I think here, sort of in this very divergent phase, you have to be okay with rejection. Just because someone doesn't answer, it could just be that they're busy, or it could just be that they really don't care about what you do. That's fine. You don't need anyone to care. You just need some people to care. And so this is definitely in the beginning. If you have never done it before, you have to be ready for a lot of rejection, and people just saying, well, I don't believe what you say, or nah, we don't do hardware, or no way this is going to work. That's fine. But at the same time, you sort of have to differentiate between what is good feedback and what is just, well, they are not focused on you. I think we had around 20, 30 interviews with potentials. And then what you have to do is, from the interviews, always, have a plan, understand what their goal is, but also be clear on what your goal is. How much do you want to raise? How much could they be a lead? Could they just be an angel? Could they just add some money? Or what do they bring to the table? You have to do also your due diligence from the other side. And then we got a few offers, and a handful of offers. In the end, we actually had more than double the commitment than we actually wanted. And then we sort of chose. You have to ask yourselves, okay, what are the things that help me in the future most? It's not about who do you think, who do you think is, this is a nice guy or whatever. It's who do you think? It's about, again, the same topic. Who helps the company most? It's not just, well, but this is so nice that he's here, that she is here, or she's like a good friend. No, it's about who helps most and can really bring the company forward. And I think this is, then you have to go through and then take your decision, and you're not going to take the decision correct all the time. That's life, right? But then be very be structured. Have a clear plan, and I'm not sure does this help? Or I think
no, definitely. I couldn't agree more. When I don't speak, I try to listen sometimes. But I think this is a key point that you mentioned, to think about who is the most helpful to bring the company from the current stage to the next level. I think this is a key point in fundraising, not about friendship, not about who is the nicest person, but really who brings the right network to the table, who brings the right expertise to the table. I mean, you have a lot to accomplish from Series A to Series B. It's not, the company will not be the same after you spend the money, usually. So you need a lot of expertise. This is a really great point.
And I think at the same time, while this is very important what the skills are, like, you have to like these people. You have to be amazed by these people. If you don't like working with someone, well, then you should probably not work with them. And I think, sure, I always push on, you have to understand what their goal is and what your goal is. But it has to be a match, because this is not a 2-month POC that you do. This is a commitment which is 10-year plus. Usually my marriage on average doesn't even hold that long. So try to really do your due diligence and understand if this is going to work. And
I couldn't agree more. There was a second part that you mentioned. So basically, I understood from what you said that your round was overcommitted. So you had more opportunities, more offers on the table than you needed. And I think there are two ways in principle to handle that. Bring in the harvest, bring home the bacon, and just find a story that justifies that you take all. More money, you can fly higher, you can do it faster, or make a decision. What motivated you not to go down the greedy route and say everything that we can get a hold on, we take, but to make a decision and say, okay, I mean, this is the capital that we need, we commit to that, and we choose from the offers that we have?
I mean, the end is always a trade-off, right? Capital you take now is generally more expensive than capital you take in the future. And this sort of is against that. You want to take as much capital as possible because this buys you as much room for mistake, time to actually achieve what you want to do. So in the end, it's it has to do a lot with trying to understand what you want to do and how you think you can do it. And both extremes are not great. Like, so I think there's no formula to it, but you have to think about it like as if there would be a formula. It's like, do I want to really dilute more or get even more? Do I really think this helps more? And yeah, there was always, in hindsight, you always are probably smarter about this, but just make an educated guess and then,
When you can negotiate. It's a good point. What's the biggest learning that you made for yourself during the fundraising?
There are a lot of learnings. I'm just trying to, which is one that I could. I think because fundraising in essence is like speed dating or kind of like dating. So you have to very quickly understand if this could work. And I think the biggest learning here is you do prepare very well, be very transparent of what you want to do, but also ask very well. Try to understand what they want to do and question also them, because it's a two-way commitment. And I guess talk to people who did it before. I think that was something that really, I think I could accelerate my learning. I had some really great people that were in a similar position a couple of years ago, and just being able to exchange thoughts about things, they could give me an answer straight away. Not that you have to take this for granted, but most of the things that you're going through in a fundraise are things that people have done before you. It's not like, going to the moon and never has done it before. Nobody's done it before. You can ask, leverage that, like really ask people. Like there's no dumb question. It's just dumb when you don't learn from it. But
yeah, that's true. When we build on that, what you said, ask the right questions. When you need to pick one question that you give fundraising entrepreneurs, what in your opinion is the most important question they should ask when they raise funds?
I don't want to give one question now. I think I want to give a model. The best question is the question that the other person wants you to answer. So in an example of that is, for example, I think one question that is very good is if you ask your investor, okay, you see where I am now, where do you think we should be for the next round, for the next stage? Try to understand what they are looking for in you, because that shows so much about them. It's sort of, I will flip it around. Try to ask a question that will show you what they expect from you, because that tells them that that will tell you who they are.
The question that pops up in my mind when you say that is, what did you learn about yourself from this question? What learnings did you get in your fundraising?
So I think one is, after I asked this question, someone said, well, I think we have to make sure that the next fundraising, you have even more commitment. And this is something like, oh, I never thought about it that way. That makes absolute sense. I always thought I have to build the best product and I have to achieve this. But actually, when I think about fundraising, I have to put myself in the shoes of what is the next step? Where do I have to be next? And I think this really, this was really a great, this is a great way of thinking, to always try to understand. If you don't know what you have to ask, try to understand where should I be next? And then from that, ask a question.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's important to pave a clear way to success for the company, for yourself, for the investors, and for the team. And very often I hear the answer, depends on the money. The more money we have, the more we can do it, then we can tell you. But I think this is the wrong approach.
Exactly, because obviously with more time you can do more but then you lose the focus, right? And
I mean, the training that I got at corporations, university, and in companies and from VCs, it's pretty much have a clear goal, know the steps towards the goal. You need to be able to phrase them out. Everybody knows that life is dynamic and a lot can happen, but you have to have a clear direction and you need to be able to communicate this direction.
Yeah. Clarity is so important. Yeah.
And this leads to the closing, like in your case, but most of the stories end there. So I think it was 3 years ago with an investor, I said, it's like a fairy tale. So we have these challenges, we have the starting point, we have the character involvement, and then the marriage happens in the fairy tale and the story ends. But as you said before, with VCs, the story doesn't end with the closing of the round. It's not like going to the bank, taking out a loan, and that's it. You work together with the people for a very long time. And since Chris Smith wrote very highly about your first board meeting, I would like to make this a topic. It's the final part of our conversation. The question that I'm curious about is, what importance have board meetings, in your opinion, for a company after closing a round?
I think this is a question everyone should ask themselves, right? When I was introduced to the topic that we'll now have a board meeting, I was like, okay, well, for what do we need that? Like, why? Is it just that people can control what we're doing, or what is the goal? And I think
having a coffee in Switzerland.
Yeah, but I think it's always, you have to try to understand it from a first principle basis. And why is there a board meeting? A board meeting, you have like the key decision makers that sort of have a shared vision of your company, and you try to find the best ways to get there. And I think this is the goal of the board. Try to do the best thing for your company, for your baby, however you want to call it. And they are sort of the people who evaluate or who challenge the things that surround your company. And I think I think, come back to your question, what is the goal of a board meeting? It's to make make an environment where the company and set goals and expectations and support to make the company the best version of itself.
That's very well said. I totally agree to that. I'm curious to hear, how did you approach the preparation for your first board meeting post-investment?
So I'm a big fan of preparation. And so I thought, okay, so how do we get this? And so I had a lot of ideas. I sort of have a first draft, and then I was very clear what information I want to get out of everyone. And we sort of discussed it, and sort of the input came, well, we should also have it a bit collaborative. And I think it was a very good point. My first sort of guess was really, no, I want to, don't waste time on any unnecessary things. So I want to do an intro, I wanted to do these things, but I didn't really like to get everyone's opinion on whatever. I rather have, so this is a big question. This is an option. Do we see other options? No, okay, let's talk about the things that move the needle. So the preparation was really trying to, with this goal, the board helps us to make the company the best version of itself. What are the key questions that we need to ask ourselves? And in order to ask them and have a good conversation, you need to first make sure that all the people are aligned. You get to know each other. You have to bring them up to speed. And then you can have some good discussions.
Yeah, totally. And you decided for your first meeting to do it in person, if I read the internet right, and not virtually, but it would have saved time. I mean, you just jump on a Zoom call like we do, don't need to travel. What motivated you to vote for an in-person meeting?
Yeah, so I mean, it's where most of our board actually lives in Zurich, so that helps a bit. And it's like you have to, I mean, communication is key in trying to find this best solution. And a lot of communication is also nonverbal, how you talk, how you react. And that's why we wanted to, in the first time, at least, I mean, you also understand that everyone is busy and stuff, but we want to all get on the same page very well. And that was, I mean, to be very honest, this was also, I mean, I had my opinion, but I sort of asked, hey, do you prefer? And I sort of also wanted to know what the others think. And everyone on the board said, no, we should do it in person. So I was like, okay, good. I would also do it in person, but I also want to understand what you would do, because that's already part of the getting to know each other. And I think that's nice. Like, we are all very, very aligned on that we want to make this the best as we can. Like, and for this is a vital part.
Yeah, I think you mentioned one of the most vital part in the preparation is getting the opinion of the other board members and hearing what you mentioned it quite often now, that you are interested in hearing what they want to see and what to hear and what to do. And your board members then presented on LinkedIn that you made two very unique points at your board meeting. One was the intro slide that got mentioned one time, and the other part was workshops. What's the benefit of these two parts of a board meeting?
Yeah, so I think the interest just to get to know each other, and to yeah. In essence, why you do that is to generate trust, because only when you trust psychological safety, you can have a collaborative environment. And with the workshop, it's really to pick everyone's brains. And I mean, instead of just doing a brainstorming, you have it in a workshop where it's a bit more structured, so you can actually easily extract value to then have clear, actionable goals for the next stage. And yeah, I think we always want to have some part of that, making sure we all are aligned, agree on, have some updates, take some decisions, but then also efficiently extract, pick each other's brains to to support. Yeah.
That's true. I experienced two kinds of board meetings in my life. So one at public companies, which has the benefit, early in my career, which is the benefit, you have to deal with trained people. Everybody knows the purpose of board meetings, what happens at board meetings, and what they should say and what they should not say and not do at board meetings. For example, talking about the last vacation for 2 hours is a no-go at a board meeting because it's not part of the agenda. You can skip that to a private meeting on the weekend. I experienced it in startups, sometimes a little bit more dynamic, because sometimes people are not so experienced with board structures. How do you handle it at your company to make sure that the board meetings are focused and move the company forward and are used for the let's say the traction of the forward traction of the company, and don't drift off in some, like, I don't know, with this question, in anything that you can probably talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we like always just need some processes, and but I think you need to leave some room for creativity. But what we have a clear agenda. We have someone that keeps time. And that but by having these clear roles already defined beforehand, it can just not happen that you just talk about holiday for 2 hours. One side, you clearly define what the goal is. On the other hand, you have an agenda. So I don't know. I don't even understand how this can happen. This would be a very not so well prepared meeting. But so we do it. Yeah, it's very clear what we want to do, and the other thing is we also give room to that, because these coffee talks, this is very important, because said communication is not just about what you say, but also how you say it, what are the things currently happen in your life, and yeah.
I mean, I heard all kinds of stories about how you can lead companies, what you can do with companies. I think in the last years is at the top of the bubble. A lot of people flocked into the startup space, and the experienced personnel and experienced people with corporate governance, with structures, become naturally, I mean, when you have more people in an environment, the know-how gets a little bit diluted, and different ideas come up. But I think I'm very much a fan of the structured approach, like you two. Basically, I think what moves the company forward the most.
Yeah, it's not structured for the sake of structure. So, like, if someone thinks structure is dumb, then we'll tell it and we'll change it. But you cannot just hate structure because it's structure.
I think, I mean, in board meeting, for me, you have a lot of expensive people in the room. I mean, let's face it, the investors' time, the founders' time is expensive. I mean, even if you don't have to account for it, but it's expensive. It's the most expensive resource that you can use. And when you have, for example, 5 hours for a board meeting, I said the duration is 5 hours. The big question is, how can we use this meeting in the best interest of everybody, I mean, everyone invested in the company, to make the most out of the meeting from minute 1 to the last minute. And I think structure is the way to go. Yeah.
And like leaving room for both. Like, you should leave room for also easy chats, like introductions, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's come to the final part of our conversation.
Amazing.
Let's talk about the future. I didn't ask you about how much time you would like to allocate. So
so I have like I should go in like 10 minutes.
Okay, then let's use the last 10 minutes about the future of robotics and where you see Ascento in that game. How far are we away from the Terminator moment when Arnold Schwarzenegger steps into a room as a robot and say, hasta la vista, baby?
Okay, so it like depends. Like, you can probably program a robot that does exactly that for a video, and it's no CGI. I think that's not so hard. The question then really is, what exactly are the requirements till you would say this is fulfilled? And there are quite a few things which were not yet there. And I think one is human brain, human creativity. We're not yet there. I think what is currently happening with AI is amazing, but still lacks quite a few parts. And so this is sort of on the mind part, and on the locomotion or the physical interaction. I mean, if you look at your hand, when I look at my hand, it's amazing what the hand can do, and like how many degrees of freedom, what you can all touch. And then you look at a robot hand, it's like, well, cannot yet do that much. So this genericness of humans is still very, very, very unmatched. But I don't know, it's really hard to predict the future. Like, people tend to underestimate the next 10 years, but overestimate the short term, right? So I cannot tell you. I definitely see how everything is moving into more advanced things, but there are still some very big topics that have to be solved.
How do you see the role of Ascento? Let's try it with 5 to 10 years. What role do you want Ascento to play in the development of robotics?
Yeah. So I think in 5 to 10 years, So I will probably now underestimate what's actually going to happen.
We can come back in 5 years, unfortunately.
I think there is a lot. We start with this very core security application, and then this can expand. As I said before, it can expand on the sort of AI side, what it can do and understand, and also on the robot locomotion side, what it can do. I believe in five years we'll definitely have built more than just one product. There'll just definitely be quite a few out there, and I think this is a bit our vision. We want to help the workforce of the future to focus on what people can do best and use robotics where people could focus on other things.
That's a great vision. That's a great vision. So we'll be part of the European ecosystem still in 5 to 10 years. It's good to hear.
Yes.
It's good to hear. In the last few minutes, is there any topic open that you would like to address in this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, if there is anyone who is interested in using security robot for their assets, please reach out to us through our website. I think we can offer you a way how you can, on one side, save money, on the other hand, put your people on work that actually add more value, and then we are able to give you some very cool insights to what's happening on your asset. I think this is now that we have closed the fundraise, we now want to bring this product to a lot of people, learn more, make it even better. And so if you are part of that, let me know, best through the website. And yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Christian. It was quite exhausting. Friday evening to talk about. But I think they're very cool questions, and yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for being part of the show. I learned a lot of new things. I'm happy to hear that you are a European company that wants to move forward in a space where we still have a chance to become the world leader out of Europe. And I cross my fingers for you that you will be the next Apple, the next Tesla, the next Alphabet. Keep fighting for it. And when I am aware of someone who needs robots for security, I will definitely send them your way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great
Alessandro,
weekend.
have a great weekend. Bye.
Ciao.